I was wondering if I can invite everyone to stand up and then just shake it out. Shake it out. Move your body a little. I see some of the dance moves coming out from last night. Yeah, feel free. Switch seats, give a hug. Yeah, stretch it. Awesome. Cool. And then sit back down when you're ready. I'm also going to ask you to do another thing, because I need you to listen. And I find that in the world where we think so much, we spend all of our time thinking. So for a while, if you could also drop into your heart and listen to me from that space, it would help. It's odd to be 10 years old, so little in the back of a police car. I remember sinking into the seats, breathing really heavy, with sweat dripping down my face from the struggle to get me in the car. I remember not caring that the bumps on the road were hitting my head hard against the glass, because in that time in my life, everything hurt, inside and out. I was never alone in the car. There was always a huge towering trash bag sitting next to me, although in hindsight, it was so small, considering it's all I had. Once again, I was on my way to a youth detention center, driving past all these houses, and my imagination never failed to fill the houses, not with birthday parties, not with stories of mom packing lunches, but simple things, watching TV next to someone. I wondered so much what that sense of belonging felt like, and even to this day, viscerally, it's hard for me to feel. Sometimes I was numb on those rides. Other times, I was wise enough to realize that the rage inside of me was actually just profound sadness. I was in there because my mom quit. Her struggle with manic depression and addiction finally led her to snap, and so she picked me up from school one day, and she dropped me on the doorsteps of an underfunded child protection agency with an overworked social worker way too tired to deal with me. The next day, I was in the American foster care system, and the cars of those police and the Toyotas of my social workers became a place where I learned how to be okay with intentionally and consistently starting over. The system is broken. It often harms the very children it looks to protect. It re-traumatizes us with varying levels of abuse that way too easily happen behind revolving closed doors. In 8 years, I was in over 15 placements. Detention centers, runaway shelters, and when there was no space or abuse, I'd run away and sleep on the streets, because the reality is it was often much safer than the houses the system chose to give me. The average foster youth right now changes home 13 times, the average. For the hundreds of times that I must have asked adults, why is this happening? Every single adult blamed the system, never looking me in the eye and walking away. This is especially shocking to someone like me, because even then I could clearly see just how connected all of my challenges were to one another. My school was not a safe place. It shoves learning down our throats. My poverty meant I was stuck to have access to only unhealthy food that led me into a medical system where no doctor was asking me where these symptoms were coming from, if it was about the food or the stress that I was constantly under. He just gave me pills. I spend a ton of time wondering what would happen if we put all of our focus, energy, and resources into just transforming one of these challenges. What would happen to the rest? There's no such thing as no impact. My story pushed me to become radically responsible, which was so hard because it meant I had to let go of blaming the system too. I chose radical responsibility for the change I wanted to see in my life and for my communities, because if I didn't do that and I waited for the system to help, I would have killed myself. Or I would be on drugs like all the other kids like me who can't move beyond the pain. So on a systems level, I began to think about the own areas in my life where I could start being a part of that change, with radical responsibility as my foundation always. I worked on my relationship with myself, cultivating then spaces between people. I started moving groups to fuel community and small systems. And finally, I'm wondering how we engage society to work on itself. I began with me, which is where we should always begin. I had to work through experiences in my life that were so hard on me, they have soaked into the fabric of who I am. This was also really negatively affecting others around me, making a chance or an opportunity to build a family almost impossible. It became clear I had to deal with all of this shit, no matter who put it there. If I couldn't transform this pain, then ideas, solutions, important conversations, opportunities for change would end with me and my lack of self-awareness. The cycle continues. I especially needed to do this if I wanted to lead that change and if I wanted to fix some of these challenges within my lifetime. Here, I practice noticing when I am the problem. Once I became aware of how I affected others, I could then trust myself to bring people together. I had a hard time finding change happening around me. And so instead, I figured I would create at least the conditions for change. I found empty rooms, playgrounds, shady trees, boardrooms, and I brought people together so they could talk about life without excuses and opinions in the room. I figured out how to help people share honestly, and I helped others learn how to deeply listen. This is where radical collaboration started to enter my life. It was such a hard stretch to cultivate the habit of radical responsibility, which kept me safe, to the new habit the new habit of radical collaboration, that I not only needed others, but I needed to trust them. It's terrifying. I learned there that collaboration has very little to do with sitting in a circle. What matters is what you do with that circle. What matters is the spaces in between the people. That is the system. We are the system. So here I practice the courage to invite people in as often as I can, ensuring that when they get there, the conditions will definitely be different. As I grew as a leader, I began to struggle with and experiment with increasing complexity and adding way more people to these tables. I chose to step into organizations that were small but brave in redesigning what quality program actually looks like, alongside organizations smart enough to care about their internal culture and the people who work for them as much as their external impact. They are deeply correlated. This is where I began to master the use of human-centered design. It's a buzzword, but it means radically collaborative problem solving. And it needs diversity to thrive. Working with people started to become less terrifying for me. What I discovered is that when you invite people in, people come. People care, and they care for the right reasons. Committed board members, janitors, cross-sector funders, strangers, homeless guys who have now become my good friends, people who are looking to find meaning outside of their jobs, they all came. And if I can maintain the conditions for change, the outcomes every time are far more powerful. Here I practice guiding people and moving them through the intensely hard work of collaboration. So my frustration for the community development sector started to eat me alive. And so did never allowing myself a break from the violence. As soon as I transitioned out of the foster care system, I started working with youth who were being abused. So I needed a break. And I started over again, making a huge leap to becoming an entrepreneur. with some amazing people, with my eyes set on building more meaningful social impact and maybe even faster social impact. Our social for-profit company works outside of traditional systems on purpose so that we can pull all sectors together without the rules that hold many of us in this room back. Here I practice making grounded decisions for everyone. I decide who to work with, and I decide who I'm not working with anymore, people that abuse their power. I practice finding the entrepreneurs, or as my team calls them, the moles, inside of highly bureaucratic organizations and watch them create change in small but incredibly significant ways. So all these levels, all these circles are areas that I constantly revisit and work on. And if it's okay with you, I want to give us a moment to reflect on how you're doing in these circles. And I want you to think about not the success, but here in this space, I want you to think about where are you struggling? Because I'm a human, I know we're always really hard on ourselves. But don't be hard on yourself. Growth is not linear. Some of us need to go back and think about the things that have shaped us, whether you were in the foster care system or not. And others are ready to step up and grab courage and catalyze change on way different levels. You might think that one level here, one circle is more complex than another, but the reality is they're all insanely complex. There is no mastery. There's only practice. Start over every day. This is the part of the speech where I was going to tell you about this amazing work that we're lucky enough to drive. I was going to share some battle wounds. I was going to tell you about failures, because we've had them. I was also going to give you impressive stats, since everyone loves them. Thinking that that might inspire you to actually use more collaborative processes like human-centered design, but inspiration didn't seem to be enough. I felt like it was way more important to pull you back to my story, because I realized I finally had a chance as a child to tell the system what I needed then, especially since not much has changed in my hood. First, your refusal to collaborate is hurting me, and it's a choice. Not many of us are actually good at communication. This is why we suck at collaboration. We're so bad at it. We don't listen. We are already inserting our ideas and experiences and hijacking people's stories and realities before they even finish telling us them. I can imagine that's why it's hard for the world to share honestly right now. Maybe not listening is the link to why it's also hard to commit to the long-term relationships we need to work through the challenges that are going to come. Change is on the other side of the challenge. Change is moving through the challenge together. But we're scared of that, and we call it conflict. For many of you, when collaboration doesn't go right away, you quit. Please don't quit. Start over. Try again, because every time you quit, or don't even try, you become that adult that looked me in the eye, blamed the system, and walked away. Don't be a know-it-all. Stop it. I do it too. Fundraisers, investors, your view is narrow. Grassroots revolutionists, development workers, so is yours. Communities, so is yours. Mine is too. The more of an expert you are, the more narrow your solution will be. And the more you need a group of differently minded people to help you see the gaps in your best ideas. If you care about change that's beyond your own opinions, then you will start to play with the idea that it's not about being an expert. It's not about winning people over. It's not about buy-in. It's about getting different views on the table and seeing what emerges at the center of it. At the center is where transformation lives, and I'm not sure any of us have ever gotten there yet. As someone who works on innovation every day, Meaningful innovation first comes from deepening our understanding and widening our perspectives first. If you are not listening to differently minded people, you are stopping change, and again, you become the adult that walks away from me. Stop thinking you are better than others around you. I am blown away, I am seriously blown away at how arrogant we are. We actually believe that we have enough understanding of another person's experience, let alone a community, the 1,000 of experiences that make us up, who we are and how we feel, that we could possibly solve a challenge for them without them. Stop calling me a beneficiary of your knowledge, of your great ideas, or your resources. Invite people in who are experiencing those challenges, and make sure that they make up at least 50% of your tables, not one. Because we have understanding your books and your degrees will never be able to teach you. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not only outdated, but it's not true. Even when my body was being abused, even when I was hungry, I was always building my self-esteem. I was always thinking about the future. I was always self-actualizing. In my hardest moments is when I was actually most creative and expressive. I found my voice there because it wasn't allowed anywhere else, and that's something to talk about. The fact is, my voice and my agency was never yours to take. And it's hard for me to see communities fighting so hard to get their voice back. What makes me even more sad is that some of those communities and some of us have forgotten our voice because it wasn't allowed. My life doesn't fit in your tick box. Stop minimizing what matters to me by hollow evaluations. Stop taking time away from my social workers to write reports literally no one reads. She could have been spending 20 more minutes with me, and that is everything to a 10-year-old. The few programs and the few well-trained youth workers who were around in my life were not failures, but for sure your evaluations would have said so. Besides the fact that your questions are all wrong, your need to prove yourself instantly is crazy. You can't measure healing and growth. It's not linear, remember? Your evaluations also don't capture the moments that matter because many of your programs are flawed by design. You haven't asked me what kind of program I want in the first place. It's a systems problem. It's a big one. People sticking with me mattered. People still showing up when my anger got the best of me and I broke windows. Those people mattered. Not being kicked out of programs for bad behavior, which was really just pain, and being able to try again. That's why I'm resilient, and that's why a broken system didn't have an output of a broken adult. Money doesn't matter as much as you think. Even when I was 10, I was struck at how the world could be so full of money and resources all around me. I could see them, sometimes I could touch them, sometimes I was allowed to be a part of them for just a while, but I could never really have them. Do you remember the towering trash bag sitting next to me in the car? Whatever was in that trash bag was not what I needed to survive. It was a social worker who sat on the end of a hospital bed after 2 years of working with me and said, "Don't give up, Katy. I know you're here for a reason. I love you." The stipend for clothes you gave me meant nothing since I felt invisible anyway, and you made sure I did. I was given dozens of diaries to write in, but no one to talk about what was in them with. I was given teddy bears sometimes when I was put in a psych ward because there was no more foster homes, as if hugging the teddy bear would have helped me somehow. The truth is that Your shallow material things made me feel worse. They made me feel more invisible. What's worse is it helped the people who are not changing the system feel better. So nothing changed. Resources are sometimes extremely important, don't get me wrong, but they are not the only things that are important. There are also elements inside of us and the spaces between us that have great power. Expand what resources means, and let's build on what matters. What matters is people. What matters is a sense of belonging. And finally being able to build the world's capacity to listen. Please, start experimenting. It's fun. Lately, I have noticed that when I'm sitting still, my body never actually can calm all the way down. I'm curious about it, this vibration that moves me ever so slightly. I'm not sure if it comes from the trauma that now lives in my bones, but I know that it fuels forward my work. And I think it's important. But that vibration also very easily brings back to me the reality that kids right now are going through the same sexual violence I did, waking up being called stupid just like I did every day. You know my general story, but I remember the details. It has to stop. Please, share risk with everyone else around you, because that is what collaboration is as well. Test your ideas way more quickly than you are. Work with people who are fueled by the same vision, the one that lives outside their egos, and start over as many times as you feel like you need to. I give you permission. Meaningful solutions will come much faster this way, and we are wasting time. Seriously, play more. Like last night. This work is hard. It's never over. Find time to laugh and be silly so the work doesn't drain you so much that you have to leave. This is a reality for my life right now. Play more. Being a kid is so far away from me now. But sometimes I still feel like I'm sitting in the cop car, breathing heavy, and now I'm banging my head against the window on purpose. I'm still profoundly sad. It's hard for me to see us still blaming the system, because I know that the space between you and I is the system. We can't see it, so we blame it. And even if it's invisible, it's powerful. That's why I have hope. I have a lot of hope. I have hope for what's next. In fact, I have so much hope, I built a company around this hope. I ensure that daily I get to see all types of people coming together and standing in radical responsibility and moving towards radical collaboration, leaving power and leaving pain at the door. Another habit I have cultivated is making things look really easy. But I think it's important that I don't do that here. Writing the speech, saying it to you, has been a hard process. And it's also been important. It shows the reality of my story, but also the story of many others in detail. So from the bottom of our hearts, I want to say, thank you for listening.